In this lesson, we're going to look at operations on square roots. First two operations that we're going to look at are multiplying and dividing. When I have two square roots, in order to multiply them, I could just multiply the radicands underneath one square root. When I'm dividing, I could do a similar idea. I could divide the two radicands, again, under the same square root. Make sure when you have radicals that you have the same type of radical, meaning I can only multiply in this fashion if I have two square roots. If this happens to be a cube root, I can't do this anymore. Okay, so for instance, I have the square root of 5 times the square root of 125. So the first thing I'm going to do is multiply those two radicals together, which is the square root of 625. That simplifies to 25. We always want to perform our operation when we're multiplying or dividing before simplifying. Normally it's easier to simplify after we have everything under one square root. Our next example, we have the square root of 300x cubed over the square root of 5x. Let's put it all under one square root. That would be the square root of 300x cubed over 5x. 300 divided by 5 is going to simplify to 60. X cubed divided by x is going to simplify to x squared. The square root of 60x squared is 2x the square root of 15. Now let's look at adding and subtracting. Really, the most important thing is that we have like radicals, meaning that the radicands are all the same for all of our square roots. So I have the square root of 125 plus 2 times the square root of 20 minus 3 the square root of 5. So these don't look like they're like radicals, but they actually need to be simplified. So we might have some like radicals in this expression. The square root of 125 simplifies down to 5 times the square root of 5. 2 times the square root of 20. Well, I have my 2 that was already here, times the square root of 20 is going to be 2 the square root of 5, because 4 times 5 gives me 20, minus 3 times the square root of 5. Well, the square root of 5 is already simplified, so that doesn't need to be simplified any further. So I have 5 the square root of 5 plus 2 times 2. I'm going to multiply those two together, those two coefficients. The square root of 5 minus 3 the square root of 5. Now that I have all like radicals, I can add and subtract the coefficients. 5 plus 4 is 9, minus 3 gives me a 6 square root of 5. Okay, in this next example, I have negative 3 the square root of 45 plus 2 the square root of 12 plus 3 the square root of 27 minus 4 the square root of 20. Negative 3 the square root of 5 is negative 3 times 3 the square root of 5. Plus 2 times the square root of 12 is 2 the square root of 3. Plus 3 times the square root of 27, 3 square root of 3. Minus 4 times the square root of 20, 2 the square root of 5. So let's simplify these coefficients first. Negative 9 the square root of 5 plus 4 the square root of 3 plus 9 the square root of 3 minus 8 the square root of 5. Just like if we had variables, we would combine like terms. The same thing we're going to do here with the radicals. It really doesn't matter what order you put them in. So I'm just going to do the square root of 5s first. Negative 17 the square root of 5 plus 13 the square root of 3. Notice how I only was able to combine the square root of 5s with each other and the square root of 3s with each other. At this point, this is as simplified as it gets.